Another great day, huh, Leo?
Yale would be great.
Yale isn't ready for you.
No, that can't be right. Reload. The funds were withdrawn by your husband 3 days ago. Where is the money, Mark? Where is Leo's future?
It's my niece, Chloe's daughter. She has cancer, Elena.
Oh, she's not your niece, Mark. I know everything.
They say that a mother's intuition is a powerful thing, a silent alarm that rings when her children are in danger. But I have learned that a wife's intuition is different. It doesn't ring like an alarm, it whispers. It's a cold draft in a warm room, a shadow in the corner of your eye, a feeling that the ground beneath your feet isn't quite solid. My name is Elena, and for 20 years, I thought I was standing on bedrock. I thought my marriage to Mark was the one unshakable truth in my life. We had built a beautiful life together in the suburbs of Chicago. We had a son, Leo, who was the light of my life. Leo was 18, brilliant, kind, and just weeks away from starting his first semester at Yale. It was the culmination of 18 years of saving, sacrificing, and dreaming. Mark and I had a deal. We lived modestly. We skipped vacations. We drove old cars, all so that Leo would never have to worry about student debt. The college fund wasn't just a bank account to me. It was a promise I had made to my son the day he was born. The nightmare began on a Tuesday morning in early August. The sun was shining, the birds were singing, and I was sitting at my kitchen table with a cup of coffee and my laptop. It was time to pay the tuition deposit. I logged into our joint savings account, the one we had affectionately nicknamed Leo's Future. I typed in the password, humming a little tune, feeling that swell of pride that every parent feels when they send their child off into the world. The page loaded. I looked at the balance, and then I stopped humming. I blinked, thinking maybe the screen hadn't refreshed properly. I hit reload. The number remained the same, $7.43? I stared at the screen for a long time. My brain refused to process what my eyes were seeing. There should have been $150,000 in that account. Money we had accumulated over 2 decades. Money from bonuses, inheritances, tax returns. It was all gone. Panic, cold and sharp, pierced through my chest. I immediately thought we had been hacked. Someone had stolen our identity. I grabbed my phone and called the bank, my hands shaking so hard I could barely dial. The operator was polite, calm, and devastatingly efficient. She told me that there had been no hack. The funds had been withdrawn via a cashier's check 3 days ago. I asked who authorized it. She told me, in a voice devoid of emotion, that it was Mark, my husband. I sat in the silence of my kitchen, the phone still pressed to my ear, listening to the dial tone. Mark. Mark had taken Leo's future. Why? Was he in trouble? Gambling? Drugs? Blackmail? 1,000 terrifying scenarios raced through my mind, but none of them made any sense. Mark was a boring, reliable accountant. He didn't gamble. He barely drank. He was the man who alphabetized his spice rack. The idea of him secretly draining our life savings was as impossible as the sun rising in the west. But the bank didn't lie. The money was gone. I waited for him to come home. I didn't call him. I didn't text him. I sat in the living room, in the dark, watching the driveway. When his car finally pulled in at 6 p.m., I felt a wave of nausea. He walked through the door, smiling, carrying a pizza box. He asked me how my day was. He kissed my cheek. He acted like a man who hadn't just detonated a nuclear bomb in the center of our lives. I watched him put the pizza on the counter. I watched him loosen his tie. And then quietly, I asked him where the money was. Mark froze. His back was to me, but I saw his shoulders tense. He turned around slowly. The smile was gone, replaced by a look of pure, unadulterated panic. He tried to play dumb at first, asking what money I was talking about. But when I showed him the bank statement on my phone, the pretense crumbled. He sat down heavily on a bar stool, looking like he had aged 10 years in 10 seconds. He put his head in his hands. He told me he was sorry. He told me he had no choice. And then he told me the lie that would unravel everything. He said it was for his sister, Chloe. He said Chloe's daughter, a sweet 16-year-old girl named Mia, had been diagnosed with a rare, aggressive form of cancer. She needed surgery immediately, surgery that her insurance wouldn't cover, surgery that had to be paid for in cash up front. He said Chloe had called him, weeping, begging, with nowhere else to turn. He said he couldn't let his niece die. He said he intended to pay it back, that he was going to take a second job, that he would fix it before Leo's tuition was due. He was crying as he said it, tears streaming down his face. He looked like a hero, a martyr, sacrificing himself for family. But there was a problem, a massive, glaring problem that Mark, in his panic, seemed to have forgotten. Mark didn't have a sister named Chloe. Mark was an only child. His parents had died years ago. I had known him since college. I knew his family tree better than my own. I stared at him, my confusion morphing into a cold, hard suspicion. I asked him who Chloe was. I reminded him he had no sister. Mark hesitated. He swallowed hard. He told me that Chloe was actually a distant cousin, someone he had grown up with, someone he considered a sister. He said they had lost contact for years, but she had reached out in desperation. He said he didn't tell me because he knew I would be skeptical. He knew I would worry about the money, and there wasn't time to argue. It was a plausible lie, just plausible enough to make me pause. If a child was dying, if a young girl's life was on the line, could I blame him for acting? But the feeling in my gut, that whisper of intuition, was screaming now. It didn't feel right. Distant cousins don't get $150,000, no questions asked. Distant cousins don't warrant destroying your own son's future without even a conversation with your wife. I told Mark I needed to think. I told him to sleep in the guest room. I needed space. That night, I didn't sleep. I became a detective in my own home. I waited until I heard him heavily snoring from down the hall, and then I crept into his home office. I had never snooped on him before. I respected his privacy. But privacy is a luxury for honest men, and Mark was no longer in that category. I went through his desk drawers. Nothing. Just tax returns and old receipts. I turned on his computer. Password protected. I tried his birthday, Leo's birthday, our anniversary. Nothing worked. I was about to give up when I saw it. His gym bag, sitting in the corner. I unzipped the bag. It smelled of sweat and deodorant. I dug through the clothes, the towel, the water bottle, and at the bottom, tucked inside an old sneaker, I found a phone. A burner phone. A cheap, prepaid flip phone that looked like something a drug dealer would use. My heart hammered against my ribs. Why would my accountant husband need a burner phone? I flipped it open. It wasn't locked. I went to the messages. There was only one contact saved. C. Chloe? I opened the text chain. It went back months. And the messages, they were not the messages of a distant cousin. They were intimate. They were desperate. I miss you.
When can I see you? She asks about you every day. We need the money, Mark. You promised. And then a photo. A picture of a teenage girl. She had dark curly hair and bright green eyes. She was beautiful. And she looked familiar. Hauntingly familiar. I stared at the photo, zooming in on her face. The eyes, the shape of the nose, the curve of the chin. It was like looking at a female version of Leo. It was like looking at a younger version of Mark. I dropped the phone. The room spun. This wasn't his niece. This wasn't a distant cousin. This was his daughter. Mark had a secret family, a secret life. For how long? The girl looked to be about 16. Leo was 18. That meant, oh God, that meant he had cheated on me when Leo was a toddler. He had betrayed me when we were new parents, sleepless and happy and building our world. And he had kept the secret for 16 years? The realization was a physical blow. I felt like I had been punched in the stomach. I wanted to scream. I wanted to run into the guest room and shake him awake and demand the truth. But I stopped myself. I needed proof. Irrefutable, scientific proof. If I confronted him now, he would lie. He would say she was Chloe's child, that the family resemblance was a coincidence. He was an accountant. He was good at manipulating numbers and facts. I needed something he couldn't spin. I looked at the photo again. The girl, Mia. In the background of the photo, I saw a school banner on the wall. Oak Creek High. I grabbed my own phone and Googled it. It was a school in a town about 2 hours south of here. Close enough to visit, far enough to hide. I looked at the time, 3 a.m. I made a plan. The next morning, I acted the part of the stunned, grieving wife. I told Mark I was still processing the loss of the money, that I was worried about his niece. I asked him how the surgery went. He lied smoothly, saying it was successful, that she was recovering. He looked relieved that I seemed to be buying the story. He went to work, promising to start looking for loans to pay back Leo's fund. As soon as his car left the driveway, I was in my own car, driving south. I drove to Oak Creek. I found the high school. It was summer, so the school was empty, but the town was small. I went to the local coffee shop, the library, the park. I showed the photo from the burner phone to a few people, claiming I was an old friend of the mother looking to reconnect. It didn't take long. A librarian recognized her. Oh, that's Mia. Sweet girl. She's always here with her mom, Sarah. Sarah? Not Chloe. Another lie. The librarian gave me a general idea of where they lived. A modest apartment complex on the edge of town. I parked my car down the street from the complex and waited. I felt like a stalker. Like a criminal. But I had to know. Around noon, a woman came out of the building. She looked tired, worn down, and walking beside her was the girl, Mia. She looked healthy. She wasn't in a hospital. She wasn't recovering from emergency surgery. She was laughing, eating an ice cream cone. There was no cancer. There was no life-saving operation. The money wasn't for a medical bill. It was a payoff. Or maybe a purchase. A car? A house? A college fund for her? I watched them get into an old Honda and drive away. I didn't follow. I had seen enough. But I needed one last thing. I needed the DNA. I waited until they were gone, then I walked over to the apartment building's dumpster. I know how it sounds. Desperate. Crazy. But I was a mother whose son had just been robbed, and a wife whose life had just been exposed as a sham. I dug through the trash bags until I found a clear bag that contained mail with Sarah Miller on it. Inside the bag, I found a hairbrush. It was full of long, dark, curly hair. Mia's hair. I drove home with the hairbrush and a Ziploc bag on the passenger seat. It felt radioactive. When I got home, I went into our bathroom and took Mark's razor. I took a few strands of hair from it. I had bought a paternity test kit online months ago for a genealogy project I never started. I overnighted the samples to the lab, paying extra for the expedited rush processing. The next 3 days were a blur of agony. I lived in the same house as Mark, ate dinner with him, watched TV with him, all while knowing that every word out of his mouth was poison. He kept up the charade about the sick niece. He even faked a phone call to Chloe in front of me, asking about Mia's recovery. It was a masterclass in deception. I looked at Leo, my innocent, excited son, packing his bags for Yale, not knowing that his father had stolen his future to support another child. It broke my heart. Finally, the email from the lab arrived. I opened it on my phone in the garage, my hands trembling. I scrolled down to the results. Probability of paternity, 99.99%. There it was. Black and white. Science. Fact. Mia was not his niece. She was not his cousin's kid. She was his daughter. Mark had fathered a child with another woman while I was raising ours. He had maintained a relationship with them for 16 years. And when the time came to choose between his son and his secret daughter, he had chosen her. He had given her Leo's money. I walked into the house. It was dinner time. Mark and Leo were setting the table. It looked so domestic, so perfect. The happy family. The lie. "Hey, honey," Mark said, smiling. "I made tacos, Leo's favorite." I didn't smile back. I walked over to the table. I didn't sit down. I placed my phone in the center of the table, screen up, showing the DNA results. Next to it, I placed the burner phone I had taken from his gym bag. "What's this?" Mark asked, reaching for the burner phone. Then he froze. He recognized it. His face went pale, the blood draining away instantly. He looked at the screen of my smartphone. He saw the words paternity test. He saw the name Mia. The silence that filled the room was suffocating. Leo looked between us, confused. Mom? Dad? What's going on? I looked at Mark. His eyes were wide, terrified. He opened his mouth to speak, to spin another lie, to tell me it wasn't what it looked like. But he saw my face. He saw that I knew everything. He saw the end of his world in my eyes. He slumped into his chair, defeated. Mark, I know she's not your niece. I know there is no cancer. I know you stole our son's future to pay for your secret past. Leo gasped. Dad? What is she talking about? Mark looked at his son, then at me. He started to cry. Alina, please. It's complicated. I was young. It was a mistake. I didn't want to hurt you. You didn't want to get caught. I corrected him. There is a difference. I looked at the man I had loved for 20 years. I looked at the wreckage of my family. The truth was out. The bomb had detonated. And now, standing in the ruins, I realized I had a decision to make. A decision that would define the rest of my life, and Leo's life, and the life of that innocent girl in Oak Creek. 3 distinct paths stretched out before me, each one terrifying, each one final. Will you choose the path of sacrifice? Do I stay? Do I swallow my pride and my anger for the sake of the children? Do I force Mark to legally acknowledge Mia, merge our families, and try to salvage a future where both Leo and Mia are taken care of, even if it means living in a loveless marriage? Will you choose the path of justice? Do I destroy him? Do I hand him divorce papers right now? Do I sue him for the stolen money? Expose his affair to the world, ruin his reputation, and take everything he has left to ensure Leo gets his...
And take everything he has left to ensure Leo gets his tuition back? Do I burn his life to the ground as punishment for his betrayal? Or will you choose the path of deception? Do I reveal the card I haven't played yet? The fact that I knew about the affair years ago? The fact that the bank account he thought he drained was actually a decoy, and that I have been one step ahead of him the entire time? I looked at Mark, weeping at the table. I looked at Leo, shocked and scared. The weight of the decision hung in the air like smoke. So, tell me, if you held this power, what is your choice?